For an update, let's listen in.
With the fire. Eventually the fire worked its way through the roof. I should point out the fire had always been in the roof area. So we had to back our crews out. We then switched to using a more defensive posture. We put our aerial ladders up and deployed master streams, as we term them, the large volumes of water coming off the tips of the aerials. Those were directed onto the roof to try and suppress the large plume of smoke coming out at it and to try and get at the seat of the fire. The nature of these types of fires is such that it's very, very difficult to get at the seat of the fire with the roof structure still in place. It's a bit of a conundrum. You can't get at it from inside and you can't get at it from outside because of the structure until the roof actually starts to give way. So when the roof at the rear started to collapse, that exposed the inside and we're able to actually put it out very quickly. Just bear with me 1 second. I do need to keep an eye on the smoke plume coming off that fire. So once the rear roof started to collapse, we were actually able to get in to the seat of the fire with our hose streams and did quite an effective job of very quickly knocking the fire down. So those of you who've been watching this for hours from helicopter and see that the fire went from very big to all of a sudden very small, that was that point. Unfortunately, the fire progressed through into the main part of the main roof of the church, and as that started to open up on the interior, fueled the fire more, and it started to build right across the roof of the front of the church as well. And we've been trying to address that, frankly, for the last several hours. We're now seeing that the main part of the roof has been exposed due to collapse, and our streams are again becoming much more effective, and we've done a good job of knocking the streams down. A few things I should point out: we had all 6 of our on-duty crews here very early on in the fire. Our incident commander, Brian Patrick, did an excellent job of coordinating our resources on the fire ground. We initially had support of York Region Police and York EMS from the get-go. As a result of a callback for off-duty firefighters, we had many of our off-duty firefighters respond as well. We also benefit from a mutual aid system which extends across Ontario and enables fire departments to call on their neighbours for assistance, which we activated very early in this incident as well. As a consequence, we had fire crews from Richmond Hill, Whitchurch Stouffville, King Township, East Gwillimbury Township, Georgina Township, and Markham have all got crews on scene or in their neighborhoods helping us out with coverage while we're at the scene of this fire. And we have had another incident not too long ago as well. So, as I say, that's basically where we're at. We've been fortunate that the occupants have been out of the building fairly early on. There were no occupants or residents or business persons affected in the building itself. We have had a concern right from the initial part with the smoke plume. Exposing is toxic smoke coming off of any fire. This fire is no different than that. So we have had concerns with the smoke coming off of this fire from the beginning. With the assistance of York Regional Police, we managed to clear residents and citizens away from the structure of the fire and the smoke plumes. We did have to evacuate a small number of buildings, businesses immediately adjacent, and a couple of homes on the backside, the west side of the building, had to be evacuated as well.
Any indication as to what the cause may be?
At this point, it's still a bit premature. We've notified the Office of the Fire Marshal, and our investigative staff are waiting on scene now to do the investigation coordination with York Regional Police and the Office of the Fire Marshal if they are needed to come in. But at this point, it's a bit premature to speculate on what the cause is.
There's some roofing work being done. Any related? How is that relevant to the fire?
It's certainly going to be a focus of our investigation, is the fact that the roof was under renovation or under work at the time, and that was the source of the fire when we arrived. Well, it's going to take us still quite some time. We have not yet got the fire under control, so it will take us some time yet. It'll be hours.
We see the front structure is still up, and I know it's a big concern for people of the area, and also some of the stained glasses are still okay downstairs. Is it something that you're working to keep?
At this point, it's not our major focus. Our major focus is get the fire out, and then once that's done, then we'll focus on salvaging what's salvageable. But the reality is, with the amount of damage that's been expended so far, it's going to be a pretty difficult time to salvage much at this point.
Is that total loss?
It's that's an interesting way to catch me flat-footed. it's hard, again, I don't want to speculate and say it's a total loss, but when you consider the amount of damage to the building at this point, it's really hard to see what could be salvaged.
Any indication as to how much this will cost?
I have no idea at all at this point as far as cost.
Come down.
In all probability, the building may have to come down. Once the fire is extinguished, we'll have to have structural engineers assess the structural integrity of the building. But once you've got this much compromise of the structural with the roof, it's not uncommon that the building has to come down subsequently.
It's also very old. I understand it's 200 years old. Can you speak to how that age also affects it?
I think if you look at the building, you realize that it was very well built 200 years ago. It's withstood a fire of over 4 hours duration with extreme high heat, and we could not even knock a hole in the roof of it 3 hours and 4 hours in. So the structure and the construction of the building certainly is not weak. It is just the nature of churches that they are very tall, they're very difficult to access. You cannot access the roof from the inside, and so it just made it very difficult for us to fight the fire.
Have you spoken with church leadership?
Yes, we have been in contact with the church leadership right from the first hour of the incident.
The smell of smoke from like millimeters, is this a concern for people outside of this sort of general area?
Well, again, it's important to stay out of the smoke plume as much as possible, particularly if you've got respiratory issues. We did have York EMS treat one neighbor for respiratory exposure. That person, I believe, had asthma, so it is something that you do need to be cautious of. We take a lot of efforts to ensure that our staff are protected. That's why we do wear self-contained breathing apparatus and try to stay away from it, but we have had to shoo people away. The smoke is dissipating quickly, however. We're not seeing a lot of toxic chemicals in this. It's not a terribly unusual smoke plume, but it is something you don't want to be breathing in if you can help it. Yes.
Were there people inside when the fire first broke?
There were no people inside. There were people on scene with the construction company, but there are no people inside the building. Sorry.
Are you in the Ministry of Health monitoring the air quality?
Not typically for something like this. If it's involving chemical effluent, we would typically contact Ministry of the Environment, but for something like this is not typically a concern. We have had Ministry of Labor on scene. They are typically concerned about fireground operations, and they have been present.
You mentioned a number of residents were evacuated. How many homes will they be allowed back, if you can clarify?
Yeah, it'd be 6 or 8 homes were evacuated as soon as the fire is knocked down, which again, wish I had a mirror in my hand. Probably in the next couple of hours we'll be able to allow people back in. In the next few hours we'll be allowed those people to get back in. Sorry, someone over here had a question?
Just how many firefighters did you have at the...
Yeah, altogether at this point we have 14 crews on scene, so 4 or 5 firefighters per crew, about 60 firefighters plus quite a number of York Region Police. Dozen?
Yeah, we have 15.
15 York Regional Police officers are here as well. We have 2 or 3 York EMS paramedic units here as well.
Is this like one of the biggest fires that's hit Aurora?
I've been here 7 years. This is the longest time I've had to stand in front of television cameras and the biggest smoke plume I've had to deal with in 7 years. It's a fairly large fire. This is not a common deal.
Do you want to say a few words?
Yes, if I might. Let me first of all express our gratitude to the first responders in this community, firefighters, police services, and the EMS. They were there in the shortest period of time. They responded very quickly. This is a real challenge, as we heard from the Deputy Chief. This is a tragedy for this town, but thank God there was no loss of life and no injury. We have yet to deal with this, and I know this, that on behalf of our community, I just very sincerely want to express our appreciation to the men and women who are first responders and who have come to support us here in this community. I'd like to perhaps give Inspector Melber a chance to respond as well to questions.
Yeah, anything you... Sure. Can't see me. That's great.
Inspector, maybe you could just
Sure.
talk about this from a police standpoint and traffic in the area.
Sure. We responded to this call around 11 o'clock, just like the fire department did and EMS. People were taken out. There was some preschoolers and some adults in the church, but they were evacuated immediately when the workers were advised that there was a fire going on. And on the police side of it, the first thing that we did is basically tried to get a perimeter around the church so we can get the fire department's trucks in and all their all their equipment and make sure all the public is safe. As the fire progressed and there was smoke, there was a lot of black smoke, and what happened was the wind was blowing it all over the place, so it wasn't just that in one area, it was going from north to south to west. So that's why it was a good thing that we evacuated everybody basically all around the church. So we basically shut off everything off from Kennedy Street to Wellington on Yonge Street, and then we went backwards from there. And the people of Aurora were very, very cooperative, and everybody kind of did their thing and made our job a lot easier because when that smoke comes, all of a sudden it's instantaneous. You can't see anything. So it was kind of a bit of a scary thing for some people. We had some handicapped people that we had to help out, so we actually had the YRT come and help us out with buses in case we needed transportation, EMS. So everybody really worked well together. Our credit to the fire department that came here and is doing a wonderful job. It's a very sad thing. I live in this community. This church has been around since 1876. It's a real sad day for all of us in Aurora. Yeah, we're still looking. I think I was talking to the deputy. We're still looking at probably another 3 or 4 hours that we're going to have Yonge Street shut down, and then basically when it is contained and we have to put a perimeter outside around the church, we're still going to have to probably reroute some of the traffic also.
Are any businesses in the area impacted by this? Like within the
Absolutely. You know what happened was. At the start, we were letting people go in to make sure that they stayed in the building, but once the fire got going and there was a heavy smoke, it just wasn't worth it. So a lot of the businesses, they took it upon themselves to shut down their business for the afternoon and kind of left, which made things a lot easier for us.
Deputy Chief, if I could ask you just one more question. What is the challenge going forward for the next few hours for your team here?
Frankly, just to make sure that the fire is completely out. We have to then evaluate the structural integrity of the building. Before we put any crews in, we'll have to evaluate the structural security before we move in, and then we'll have to get in to ensure that the fire is completely out. Fortunately, we've got very good devices for detecting any latent heat. We can do air quality testing. So we'll have to do all of those things before we release the building back to the property owners. We'll have to deal with the cleanup after the fact.
And who does the air quality testing?
We do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Spell your name one more time. Sure. L-E-S?
All right, we just finished hearing from Deputy Fire Chief Paul Leslie. Now officials are in the process of doing an update, and we saw MPP Frank Cleese, the MPP for that area, just a few moments ago. And the fire is at the Aurora United Church. Now, the officials are telling us that it's not under control just yet. It started in the roof and spread to the main part of the building. They also said they got the occupants out early on. They also say at this point no injuries that are known of. They said they managed to clear residents and businesses away from the area. They said it's too premature to tell what the cause of the fire might be, but they also say from their first assessment, it appears that there's a great deal of damage to the building. They do not know if it's salvageable. Now, that church, the Aurora United Church, has been in the community and in that area since about 1878. Keep it here on Toronto's Breaking News. CP24 will have the very latest on this fire that is still in progress at the Aurora United Church in Aurora.